I was just ready for the next one, to be honest. At that point, I was like, no, we came so close, we can do it. Had a brief pause for Christmas, and then I drove my team slightly crazy because in January I was there going, right, I'm ready. What's next?
Hello and welcome to the Lib Dem Podcast. Remember, hit that like button and subscribe to the podcast. We want to get as many people to watch this as possible. And we also just want to thank, before we go into the main bit of this meeting, thank you to all our Patreon subscribers for generously donating money to the Lib Dem Podcast to keep us going. We don't get any funding from Central Party. This is all just us volunteers doing this off our own back. So thank you so much for everyone that helps out. This is the first of our new series. We know there's a general election maybe only months away in terms of 2023. When you think of it like months, it's terrifying. So we want to have interviews with every single one of our parliamentary target candidates. They're slowly getting approved now. And the first up is Zoe Franklin. Hello, Zoe.
Hello, John. It's lovely to be here.
So, Zoe, you have been the candidate for Guildford and have been selected again. So firstly, congratulations on being reselected.
Thank you.
Oh, I always find that might be sometimes the more awkward bit, actually getting through that selection. So you think, right, now I can get going. Was it relatively painless?
Yeah, it was. And it was nice to be kind of feel all official now again. Because like you said, I stood in 2017, I stood in 2019. So to be able to be all official again, ready for whenever a general election gets thrown at us is quite nice. It's a good feeling.
Brilliant. Well, we'll do everything because not everyone knows where Guildford is. I know this might be shocking to you because I know you're local, but so Guildford, you'd say, is just southwest of London, very much in what the Lib Dems would say the commuter belt, the golden halo, whatever we want to call it, around London. So that gives a bit of geography of where we are. We're going to talk a little bit about the makeup of the constituency, some of the challenges, some of the history as well that's gone through, because it's quite an interesting parliamentary seat. But firstly, Zoe, let's talk about you. So who is Zoe Franklin?
So I've been involved with the party since probably, I think I became a member in 2007. And I often tell this story, but I think it kind of encapsulates what so often happens with people. I didn't join the party in order to stand. I actually joined the party in order to support my husband, who is contemplating standing. My husband didn't stand. I helped some people get elected. And then next thing I knew, we unfortunately had a by-election. The person was moving away. And I got asked to stand with the words, "It doesn't take much time, Zoe." And you're already heavily involved in the community. And would you like to stand? And I said no. But you know how it goes. Within a week, I actually had a think and thought, actually, I can make a real difference potentially. And I was living at the time and then lived there for a very long time in a council estate in Guildford. Had, through the work I was doing with the local residents association and the local church, kind of started to see glimpses into people's very complicated lives and the fact that there are people who, couldn't afford furniture, were struggling to pay their bills, and thought the Conservatives are doing absolutely nothing. In fact, they're just ignoring the entire community, really. I want to try and stand in the gap and advocate for these people and work for my neighbours to help make their lives better. And so here we are, just over 12 years later. And stood for Parliament twice and about to do it a third time.
So was politics always part of your upbringing? We've interviewed people where dads and grandparents used to sit them down and they'd have the conversation around the kitchen table. That wasn't my story. I came from politics fairly late. I joined politics after I finished uni when I just got fed up and I thought, if something's going to change, I've got to do it. What was was it very young for you? Were you always into politics, or how did that go?
So no, not at all involved in politics in my youth. My family aren't at all political. In fact, my parents, up until very recently, both absolute stalwart Conservative voters. And so for me, just wasn't interested. However, I have always voted Liberal Democrat. That's a proud moment. I think in the first point in my life, it was about a bit of a rebellion against my parents. But also I then read the preamble to the Constitution. Which feels slightly strange when I say that out loud, because 17 reading the preamble, but that resonated with me. And while I wasn't interested in getting involved, I just felt that fits with my values. Just voted Lib Dem for many years, wasn't interested. And then I kind of describe it as my quarter life crisis, and it was around that time where I was working in publishing in London and decided that wasn't saving the world enough. And ideas you have at 25. But yeah, and around that time I was pregnant with my first child, took time out to have him, and that's when I got approached. All the things I've just described happened, and I got approached to stand for council, and kind of never looked back, and actually have just become more and more passionate about the difference it can make in people's lives, and the fact that it's just so important to have people at local government and in Westminster and all the other elected roles we have who just really care about their communities and are prepared to put in the work to help people.
Was there a singular issue that kind of thought, again, most people join for kind of national issues. It's certainly, again, the case for me, it was Iraq, ID cards, all that stuff under the Blair government. Was it a particular issue that lit the fire in your belly and thought, no, you know what, something's got to change?
The more I got to understand the policy through the fabulous people in Guildford, going to conference with them, hearing them talking, that kind of drew me in. But for me, the driving force has always been the kind of the social justice stuff. So I, as I said earlier, it was looking around me in the community and realizing there were so many people struggling, and no one, particularly the Conservative run council, was doing anything to help them.
Hello, John from the Lib Dem Podcast here. We are delighted to say that this episode is sponsored by Praetor Rains. Now more than ever, you need a professional-looking online presence and website. Praetor Rains have been helping Liberal Democrat campaigns succeed for 18 years. Their Lib Dem Foci package combines a website, social media and email system to help Lib Dems win. You'll receive great support from real people, fair pricing and a huge range of features to choose from. Praetor Rains are already the bespoke developers for Lighthouse, Lib Dem Draw Online and the LD Directory. They combine a talented system design with an unrivaled understanding of our party, our data and our systems. To find out more, check out the Praetor Rains website at praetorrains.co.uk/liberal-democrats. Let's get on to Guildford itself, right? So it's a little bit of a complex parliamentary seat, because obviously it isn't just Guildford. In fact, it's only half of what we would say is probably Guildford if you look on the map. So the constituent takes in Guildford and Waverley councils, or part of both of them. So you've got basically Guildford, the urban part of Guildford, a small land corridor, and then it goes down to Cranley and some villages around there. So it looks like it's quite a diverse constituency, urban bits of Guildford sprawling out into a little bit of the Surrey countryside.
Yeah, so the bulk of it is very much Guildford town centre, and that's where the largest kind of collection of people is. But then the second largest is, as you say, Cranley, which you get to via the land corridor. But we also have lots of really fabulous, diverse villages all around the centre of Guildford, and then going down to Cranley and round Cranley. So it's an absolutely fascinating place to be, the PPC, because you need to be really aware of all the different issues. So it's not just the kind of the stuff that you think about affects people in an urban environment. Actually, we have a lot of farming land. We have a huge amount of green belt. So yeah, really diverse in terms of the issues and the people, and I love it. I love Guildford.
Now, Guildford's parliamentary history has basically almost been entirely Conservative up until 2001. I think it was like something like the last time before that was like maybe 1906 was the last time it wasn't anything but Tory. We took it in 2001. The Lib Dems took it. Lasted 4 years, agonisingly losing out by just 347. And since then, it's had Anne Milton as its MP, who then resigned as a pro-European Tory, resigned, and then Angela Richardson came in, and that's who you were up against last time, with Anne Milton standing as an independent.
Yeah.
Now, so you got within 3,337 votes.
That's the number etched on my brain, John.
but it was a huge. I mean, it was a huge. Upswing to you. I mean, you went up from 23% or 24% of the vote up to nearly 40% of the vote and narrowly missed out. So I mean, going forward, obviously that's that 3,000 votes you've got to get, but how are you going to approach that? I'm also thinking about Anne Milton as an independent got 4,000 odd votes as well. So are you hoping that the Anne Milton-esque Tories might come across to you as well?
Yeah, so Anne Milton's vote was a very complicated vote, because we're aware that some Lib Dems did vote for her because they felt that she deserved thanking for the way she stood up on Europe. And we did have some sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek conversations with people saying, well, you could send her a bouquet of flowers or a card. But, you know, it was all very good-natured. But, you know, of course, some of the people who voted for her were soft conservatives who didn't want to vote for us because of our stance on Europe, but couldn't bring themselves to vote for Angela Richardson and the Conservative government run by Johnson. But equally, there were plenty of people who would never vote Liberal Democrat. So as I said, it was a complicated vote, Anne's vote. But what we're really aiming for going forward is we need to keep squeezing the Labour vote. I mean, for us, that's really crucial. We don't take anything for granted here. You know, when you've come so close, you're very aware that all it takes is little changes in the media, little changes locally that can knock you off course. So we're really squeezing Labour. But a big target audience for us is soft conservative voters, and particularly the ones, well, let's be frank, they're people who their values align with us. They were probably Cameronites back in the day. And now we know from the doorstep, they look at Johnson's government and they're just horrified. And
is Cameron now back in the day? Is that how long me and you have been doing this for? That Cameron is considered back in the day?
I feel like, yeah, it feels a million years ago now. A lot has happened. A lot has happened since. And you talk to those kind of conservative voters and they're really genuine and they really care and about people and the environment. And the Johnson government just doesn't fit with them anymore. And certainly those who actually know the name of the local Conservative MP, they're also equally horrified by her and by, I mean, she's pretty right-wing, let's be honest. I mean, she joined Parlour at one point, which I think kind of says it all. She is very loyal. She's a classic 2019 new intake. She will do what she's told. And people don't like the fact that she does that. You know, she's obviously voted for all the recent stuff around the tax hikes, the triple lock, you know, you name it, she's voted for it. And particularly the one that really gets talked about on the doorstep is the stuff around free school meals. People hate that. People just, yeah, it doesn't fit with their values.
I mean, the MP at the moment is Angela Richardson. Like I said, I have to be honest, I wouldn't have been able to pick her out in a lineup if I had things. She doesn't seem to be anyone who's done anything other than she works for the Department of Education, she's an undersecretary in that place, which has gone super under Gavin Williams, and so clearly that must be a big boon for her. But what that leads into what you were saying about, you know, the free school meals. She was part of that team that monumentally screwed that up over and over and made Marcus Rashford into a national hero.
Yeah, and in fact, she's no longer got that job with the education team. She's actually just today, we found out that she's got a job with Michael Gove.
Oh, right.
Which is going to be really interesting to watch how that works. But I think we all know that when you're a PPS, as she is, you really have to be loyal. And, you know, combined with just look at her voting record. And that's what we keep saying to local residents. Just if you're looking to find out what she's all about, look at her voting record.
And the demographics of Guildford suggest that wouldn't play in her favour. If you look at things like Cheshire and Amersham, those kind of, you know, moderate One Nation Tories, which were absolutely cooled both in Parliament and then their voters left, particularly in Cheshire and Amersham. Let's face it, Guildford is a fairly wealthy-ish area compared to most of the country. Those Tory voters, those moderate Tory voters, are not going to like a loyalist that does whatever the government says, even when the government's incompetent.
Yeah, you just encapsulated that, John.
Well, there you go. I can do your messaging. That's fine. I will come down to Guildford. You know, it's just off the M25, and then I can get there, no problem.
You're always welcome, John.
Oh, right. I'll do a tour. That's what I'll come round. But going back to yourself, so who are the people that do you think have influenced you the most, actually, in getting where you are?
Yeah, and to be honest, up until recent years, I haven't really been involved on a national and haven't really known people, but, you know, the people who very locally have really supported me, really inspired me. I mean, Sue Doughty, who was the MP between 2001 and 2005, is pivotal, really, in my becoming as heavily involved and becoming PPC. And she was the woman who actually asked me to stand. And, it's why I'm such a passionate proponent of actually asking people. So often we expect people to answer emails of, would you like to stand? It just doesn't work with most people. So Sue's been great. She's been ever so supportive over the years. Someone else locally for me who's also really inspired me is Margaret Sharp, Baroness Sharp. She was the candidate before Sue. And interestingly, of the 4 candidates who have ever stood as Lib Dem, 3 of us are all based here in Guildford still. So we all get on really well, and that's been incredible to learn from her. Her focus has always been education, and she's just been brilliant on that. So yeah, it's been a really wonderful experience to be kind of mentored by some fabulous people in Guildford. And in terms of kind of the wider party, since I got kind of really stuck in on a bigger scale, I have to say Tim Farron really inspires me. I think he just shows what it is to be a great constituency MP. I mean, he just wins and wins and wins, and he works so hard and drives the team so hard, but they all love him and they all love it. That whole being out there campaigning, serving their constituents. So
still finds time to seem to do fell runs every 2 seconds as well. I don't know what the lad's made of. He's good Lancashire stock, so which is obviously will help anybody.
Yeah, exactly. He's had boundless energy. So those are the kind of the people day to day. But actually, one of the other things is my day job is I work for ALDC, and I'm continually inspired by the people I meet through that job. I mean, honestly, even when working with parties to help them move forward, I'm always learning something new or getting a new idea or being inspired by people in the local party. It's fabulous. So many great Lib Dems out there, John. And I know you've met loads of them.
Well, weird enough, I actually met quite a lot of your Guildford Lib Dems as well, because after 2019, we at the ALDC, this isn't an ALDC advert, sorry, but it seems it looks like it's going that way. Preston was paired up with Guildford because Guildford had a fantastic set of election results that went from Conservative to no overall control, is that right? And but Lib Dems is the biggest party, so that, and again, we've talked about this a lot in the pod. Parliamentary success or potential parliamentary success starts at a local level first. Some people might think, well, we're miles away. We've only got 1 seat in wherever it might be, Lytham or somewhere like that. You think, well, that 1 seat, you double it next year, then you double it the year after, and suddenly you get momentum. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, I can sort of look back at the last, our lowest point really, honestly, was 2015, both in terms of the council and the parliamentary. And of course, that's all for very obvious reasons around the coalition. But we have worked really hard, the whole team, to build up from that point through to the 17 councillors we have now to be able to be co-leaders of the council. In May this year, we went from 3 seats to 5 in Guildford Borough and then another one in Waverley Borough. So that basically we have 50% of all of the county seats in Guildford. So all of that is absolutely crucial to then the vote share that we have at the parliamentary level. And so I just completely believe in the fact that you have to be really strong on a local basis for that to be the foundation of success at the parliamentary.
Let's talk about Guildford. Let's talk. What's the best thing about Guildford? What do you love about where you're hoping to represent?
So many things. I love the fact that you can be right in the town centre and 5 minutes walk. I'm up on the Downs. That's fab. I love the proximity to London because it's straightforward for commuting, but actually that means I get the best of both worlds because I can enjoy London, but I can also enjoy the fabulous things that we have in Guildford. And I did music degree, so I'm really into kind of arts and music, and we have fantastic homegrown stuff, but we also bring in a lot of stuff from London, often comes down to visit, so I love that. And just the people, I mean, I've been here since I came to university in 2002. Now there's an admission, it's a while ago now. And before that, I lived in Farnham. So I know Guildford really well. And there's just such a wonderful variety of people from all different backgrounds, all kind of meeting together. And you get such fantastic ideas coming out of the people. I mean, both the university, but more widely, it's just such a inspiring place to be. And we have a wonderful mix of the historic, but also really cutting edge stuff. So we have a research park, and we have a lot of high tech businesses here. So yeah, you just got, it's so many fabulous things, John.
Well, you know what? I am going to come and visit. This is just, it just has to happen now. But so what are the big campaigns? You talked about how, yeah, the MP is particularly poor. It doesn't seem to like she really does a lot, or publicly quite a lot. So what are the big campaigns you're focusing on in your, well, I was going to say the run up to this election, but really we are getting into the serious point of a campaign now, because again, as the ALDC and campaign say, what you do, it's not the final months in which you win an election, it's the couple of years out.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you haven't worked it out already, Guildford's a really nice place. So it's actually quite hard to find big campaigns. And what I mean by that is we haven't got any hospitals being closed or incinerators about to be built. And actually those were the things that Sue Doughty got elected off the back of, plus being a fantastic campaigner and local champion. So for us, we're really focusing on a couple of things. I mean, there's stuff around just the planning reforms which were proposed has been really resonated with local people here. We've talked a lot about it.
Which your MP will now be a part of, because she's joining Zoe's team.
Exactly. And it's going to be a bit of a watch this space, or whether they actually deliver their U-turn as they say they will. But I tend to focus on the big things like the planning, and the kind of the education stuff is going to be another big thing for us. We have so many families here in Guildford, but even then, a lot grandparents as well really care about the education of our children. So it's something that speaks to them as well. And as with so many places, NHS. But then we really focus on the kind of the community-driven, hyper-local stuff, because it's really important. We realised for people to know who I am.
Yeah.
And we've seen it with so many of our MPs, particularly Daisy Cooper. It really stands out. Just people don't know her as Daisy Cooper, they know her as Daisy. And so people knowing who I am, trusting me, feeling that actually it doesn't matter what's going on in the national picture, in the national media, actually it comes down to the Conservatives and me. And I want people to think I have to vote for Zoe because she's the only one who's going to deliver. And I've seen how the Lib Dem councillors have delivered for Guildford. Of course I can trust Zoe. And so there'll be no question in their minds. So we do a lot of kind of very hyper local work. And one of the things we're just starting to get back into is campaigning in our villages, because they're really, really crucial. I mean, Guildford town, as you can probably imagine, is, you know, pretty hardcore Lib Dem, pretty reliable vote for us. But we're always working hard there, which you should never take anything for granted. But at the same time, we really need to bring our villages along with us. Yep. So we're starting to do a real project around making sure we're out in the villages, talking to people, understanding their concerns, and then acting on them. So in many ways, it's the same things that we do at a local council level, just on a bigger scale.
And you brought in the scale of it. Is that the biggest challenge in your role right now? Is scaling up resources from what happens in a local election to then doing it across a constituency?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's some really practical geographical things. I mean, admittedly, Guildford constituency is not on the scale of Alistair Carmichael's constituency.
Or what was it? Brecon and Radnorshire. Oh, grief! Yeah, that was a big constituency.
Yeah. But even so, to get from Guildford to Cranley, some days 20 minutes, other days hour and a half. So to try and the practicalities of that is quite interesting and quite challenging. But also, you know, yes, trying to scale up from winning 5 seats in the counties and 17 in the boroughs through to winning a constituency. And actually, we really want to make sure we've got a secure majority, because we don't want the Conservatives to be able to sneak back in. We want to turn Guildford gold for a very long time, John.
Yeah, and so what's the most influential resource that you tap into? Because I'm wondering, because being a parliamentary candidate is kind of all-consuming, and I do wonder how you balance your kind of work life and home life. You do have a family, and so what's the most valuable thing you've kind of learned on this road to be able to manage it?
I live by my calendar, and I live by lists. I'm a real planner, so it can be really challenging and pretty kind of all over the place. So it's about, for me, being really organised and always being able to look ahead and go, okay, well, next week, these are the blocks of time I'm working with, and working with the core team, the campaign team and our organiser to really kind of manage my time, make sure that I'm doing the stuff where I can bring the most value. Yeah. And that's how I juggle it, because obviously I have a day job. I also have, as you said, I have 2 wonderful boys and a husband, and I'm the primary carer. So there are a lot of balls to juggle, but actually it's working, and it's done through some, well, my organiser would laugh about me saying the state of the colour coding on my calendar, but it works. It completely works.
And so here's a question that I picked up, and I thought it was such a good one. I thought, well, I'm going to ask all the target candidates, and you can speak on behalf of your organiser if you wish. I don't mind. If you had 10 times the budget you have now, what would you spend it on?
Oh, lots more digital,
and more leaflets.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was going to say more direct mail.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. And we're going to, there's no harm. We can be absolutely honest, everything in a political career. I mean, I've been elected 11 years. You've been elected on a local level as well. It's not always smooth sailing. You're about to hit 2 years of an intense kind of period of time for you. How do you get yourself out of campaigning slumps and ruts? We had a bad election in 2019. We lost some people who didn't deserve to lose, vaccine bounce and everything else. How do you then bounce back? I mean, disappointed. I mean, you must have been disappointed after 2019, after getting so close. How do you dust yourself off and think, right, I'm going at it again?
Yeah, so 2019 was a very strange result, because we lost, and I was, of course, really disappointed, but at the same time I was really proud of what we achieved, because as you said earlier, the swing we had was fantastic. And so one of the things I personally do is I'm very aware that I am the team leader, so I often need to be the person who's there kind of helping people pick themselves up. And I tend to also, and this has really happened in 2019, I kind of held it very lightly, whereas many people around me were going, we can do this, Zoe, we can actually win. Of course, I had to believe that we could win, because I did genuinely believe that. But at the same time, I never let myself ever kind of dwell on what would happen if I won, because then I knew that it'd be easy to pick myself up. And yeah, sadly, we didn't win, and it certainly was easier. And I was just ready for the next one, to be honest. At that point, I was like, no, we came so close, we can do it. Had a brief pause for Christmas, and then I drove my team slightly crazy, because in January I was there going, right, I'm ready. What's next?
And I think that's part of the process. All of us have to go through political campaign, particularly if you're starting from somewhere which doesn't have a strong base. Is you have to think about maybe a 2 or 3 election strategy. You've got to manage your expectations, because if you believe the whole world is going to crumble if you don't win it this time, politics can be brutal and it can be unfair sometimes, and you've got to work that into your psyche, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also always think about it from the perspective of, if I was never to win, and obviously my hope is that I will, but if I was never to win, would I still look back and be able to say I have no regrets and I made a difference? And right now I can still keep looking back and going, yeah, I've loved every minute of it, bar 1 or 2. We always have one or 2. And I feel like I have made a difference. And so for me, I feel like, yeah, whatever happens, it's good. It's good.
And again, we can put that. There was a lovely conference has just been, and there was a fantastic fringe event I was at, talking about dealing with the red wall seats. Seats not getting a lot of attention. Sometimes it's Lib Dems, 1 or 2 of them in an area, just fighting their own little patch. And I think that's really important to know, is the journey, helping people on the journey, is significant in itself.
Absolutely.
I'm in a position where I may never become an MP. I realise Northwest England isn't exactly a hotbed of liberalism at the moment, but if I help thousands of people along the way, then I've done good in this world. And I think people have got to have that in their mindset as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have so many councillors across the country who are not Liberal Democrats, who just aren't as far as I'm concerned, doing what they were elected to do, which is serve their communities. Whereas actually every single Lib Dem I know of is doing exactly that. And so, yeah, if you never reach your ultimate goal, but you've been a fantastic councillor or you've been a campaigner who's worked their socks off supporting the community, I think you should always hold on to that, as you've made a real difference in people's lives.
So talking about making a difference, obviously that's why we try and get into power as well. That is, I think Tim Farron's always said, politics, you want power to make a difference.
Yeah.
So the campaigns that are coming out now, obviously the conference has just come out, lots of stuff on education has now come into it, about competency. So is that giving you hope that the Lib Dems going forward, I mean, our manifesto is still probably is some way off, but the fact is we are developing good themes for you to campaign on?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I came away from a Davies speech feeling really, really good. There was so much in there which I can use on the doorstep and in leaflets. And to be honest, for me, that's the test, is does it encapsulate something that I can put on a leaflet or have a conversation about on the doorstep, and that people are going to go, yeah, I really like that. Yeah, that meets me where I'm at and tries to fix a problem I'm genuinely experiencing. So for me, particularly, the standout one was the education stuff around the catch-up funding. It's a conversation I hear all the time at the school gate. So I'm really pleased that we've decided that actually we are going to be returning to education in that way. It's great.
What do you expect? I mean, a lot of people listening to this will have no idea of the relationship a target candidate has with HQ. You hear some of the stories. It was going really well until HQ got involved or whatever. But what's that relationship like with you at the moment?
We've been really fortunate in Guildford that my experience of HQ has been really positive, and certainly the support I got and the team got in 2019 was great. And we couldn't have got the result we got without them. And certainly HQ are really investing in the target seats. I think the resources that are coming out of HQ are really good. And I've got a fantastic campaign manager who's going to be working with us going forward, which I'm really excited about. So I have a really positive feeling. And actually, I think that's the same thing that comes from my team when I talk to them about it. But I know that it's not always been the case. So I think people should always have an open mind to HQ. They work really hard and they are brilliant. But sometimes you have to give them a chance and try out their ideas, and then you go, oh yeah, that was a great idea.
And so this is a question. What's the question you would like me to ask that I haven't? What's the one thing you would think, well, I really need to tell people on the podcast something, and I can't trust John to actually get the question right. So what's a question that you would like to answer that I haven't asked?
Oh, crumbs. Now that is a hard question, John. I'm going to have to pause for a moment and try and think. I guess I'm surprised you haven't asked about anything kind of like properly pre me becoming the candidate and getting stuck into politics, because obviously I came to politics quite late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well there you go. So you've talked about you didn't have a particularly political childhood. You kind of came into it fairly late. So what has kept you going to reach which would be the pinnacle of most people's careers? To be a parliamentarian in the UK is an incredible honour, and a Liberal one at that. So okay, so how did you get to that point?
I mean, I think I talked a bit earlier about how I'd had my quarter life crisis.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, my friends thinking, also actually saying to me, are you absolutely bonkers? Why would you do this? And people still ask me, particularly because actually politics can be pretty toxic sometimes. And I've been really fortunate that I've had very little unpleasantness on the doorstep or social media, whereas I know that so many candidates sadly do, and it's really unacceptable.
As well, especially female candidates get so much more abuse.
Yeah, and it's horrific, and I've been very fortunate, but I also expect sadly it to ramp up as we're a target seat going forward. But my kind of line has always been, I'm almost willing to accept it, providing it doesn't tip over to the line to my family and my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of accept it with all the normal caveats on the basis that I must be doing something right if I'm getting the kickback that I get.
Yeah.
And that keeps me kind of pushing on. And to my friends who continually ask me, why are you doing it again? Because, you know, we all have those moments where we go, why am I doing this? But it's about the fact that I genuinely believe in people and the fact that people deserve to have the best start in life, and that just because they have a particular background or live on a council estate or whatever their personal circumstances, that shouldn't count against them. And it drives me bonkers. And that bit has always driven me a little bit bonkers. Even before I got involved in politics, it made me angry. So I guess there is a low level anger that keeps me going.
And something that I've come across quite a lot. We did an episode, and listeners and watchers can check back on it. I talk to the guy that got me really into politics, a chap called Alan Hackett, who has been in Preston for 50 odd years campaigning. You know, one of these unsung heroes that you talked about as well. And I can remember when coalition and everything else happened, he just said, well, you know, if I don't do this, then someone who's not as good will be in power. And I think that's part of when we have such apathy in politics. Not many, you know, lots of parties struggle to get candidates on a local level or whatever. And it means if it means breaking through and having someone of talent to come through is all the more difficult. So if we have a passion for it, then we want to try and make sure that happens, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, right, we're coming near the end of this interview, but I want to thank you so much. I mean, what you've got a request now. You've got all the listeners and watchers on here. If people are thinking, "Wow, that's Zoe Franklin. I really want to get her elected," where can they go? Where can they find you?
Fantastic. So go to www.guildfordlibdems.org.uk. No surprises there with the website address, or find our virtual HQ on Facebook. You just need to answer a couple of questions so that we know that you are our Lib Dem, and we'd love to have you on board. Every person who gets involved makes a big difference to the campaign, because without all the fabulous people who are active for us, we won't win. Activists are the foundation.
And I'll do a little plug for it as well. If you're not near Guildford, but think I really want to help, so obviously donate to the local party, to the Guildford party as well. We've talked about this on lots of things. Things that win elections is money, manpower, and data. You know, yeah. I'm sure the Guildford Lib Dems are building up their data, they're ramping up their power, but you do need money to fund these things as well. You talked about your organisers; they all need to be paid for.
Yeah. Thanks, John. No, it's really important to what we're doing.
And you can also find you on Twitter. You are Zoe Franklin LD. You're on Instagram, Zoe Franklin for Guildford. These are, you've got all these the handles properly down, which is very, very good. No, and just thank you so much, Zoe, for coming on the Lib Dem podcast. We will keep an eye on you, but also you more than welcome to come back at any point onto the podcast. Let us know how your campaign's going, and you know, you are one of, if the Tories are going to lose this next election, you are one of the people that's going to do that. So on behalf of myself and whole of the Lib Dems, we wish you all the best, and no doubt we'll have you on the podcast very soon.
Thank you, John. It's been great to be here.
Welcome.